It's churning and that big red button's on. You know what that means, Alex?
I believe it means the show is starting now.
Brad, do you know what that means?
I have no idea. What is it?
We're on the air with the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. That's what that means. Welcome, everybody.
Exciting.
Yes, welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have our ragtag crew tonight. We have Aleks with me here in the studio.
Yep.
Oh, aren't you fancy? And we have Brad. You got to say some goofy sound too, Brad.
Yo, yo, yo.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
If I had an air horn, I'd blow it right now.
Yeah, by the way.
Say what, Brad?
I'm really into hip-hop now, so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And see, I had been playing Mac DeMarco, but we're kind of musicless tonight. That's another story unto itself. Another one of the stories that is the saga of our audio troubles.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Please stand by. Exactly. We've had people standing by. We've been requesting that people stand by for the last 3 or 4 years. Is all.
I always thought it was operators are standing by.
Yes. And of course, I'm sick. Just to add to the mix. So, good times. Anyway. So, how are you guys doing tonight? What's new? What did I miss? What's exciting?
Let's go to Brad first.
Aleks is there, so that's very exciting.
Yes, Aleks is on his spring break. So
he came to spend the week with dear old dad.
Well, not the week. Part of the week.
Oh, is that it?
And I don't know about the deer part. And I guess
what I heard him say.
But dad for sure.
And old. Yeah, old dad. That part I concur with completely.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And you're getting to spend it in beautiful northern Wisconsin this time of year where the sun is shining for the first time in several months.
Yeah, actually, it's been beautiful here, and I've been totally spoiled. I've had amazing food every single night. I really missed it in Pittsburgh. I have wild game, fish, moose, boar, venison. I've eaten it all now.
Wow.
Wait, you missed one.
Beaver.
I
was eating some beaver the other day. Not what you're thinking. The furry rodent with the flappy tail. It was pretty good.
Seriously?
Yeah, we tried some beaver.
I was a little nervous to try the rodent.
I was too, but I thought I had to try it. What the heck?
Well, that's pretty North Woods down home.
Yeah. Yeehaw! Anyway, I guess that's a little different from our normal. Well, I don't know if there is such a thing as a normal Annoying Peasant Radio show, but.
And now for something completely different.
Thank you, Aleks. That's what we were looking for right there. So that means I got to start the show. All right, so I'll do that. Welcome, everyone, to this amazing, shall we say, episode of the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. Thanks for joining us. My name is, of course, Tom, and I'm along with Aleks and Brad tonight. So we will have, I think, a little bit of a wide variety of views and different opinions being voiced tonight. Anyway, we intend on discussing a number of current issues, things that are topical at the moment, but also self-ownership. That's kind of our feature story or our featured lesson for the evening.
Isn't self-ownership topical?
Yeah, it's applicable to a lot of the stuff. And I think that hopefully will be one of the many interesting angles we bring to the show tonight.
See, there's the genius of your planning.
There you go. See, it's all by accident. They call that planning, though.
Yeah, well, okay, fine.
Anyway, I usually been doing this short introduction kind of to the overall topic of the day, so I'll give that a whirl here. Libertarian theory, which I don't like to use that word so much anymore, but that's another story, as it has been called, is really about justice. It does not describe how you should live, but it centers on the use of force in society. It determines when the use of force is justified, and the answer, of course, is only in defense. Therefore, the use of aggressive force is subject to sanction. But to determine whether a particular use of force is defensive, which would be legitimate, or aggressive, which again is subject to sanction, one must establish property rights. And this is the crux of the importance of discussing the topic tonight, self-ownership, because it leads to the establishment of a system of property rights, and really we talk about what constitutes ownership. Actually, I think that's a bit of an interesting topic unto itself. But I'll just conclude here by saying when discovering self-ownership, there are many questions and some interesting answers. For instance, if you don't own yourself, how could you own anything else? Right? That's kind of a little interesting dilemma or thought. And and really the basic question, what constitutes ownership? If you just use something, does that mean you own it? And then in the context of the real topic tonight about self-ownership, what about the possibility of selling yourself into slavery? Is that even possible? So anyway, that's what I'm putting forward for the night. And then I usually like to start here with a couple quotes. And actually, these are, I think, retreads of quotes I've done recently, but I think they're appropriate to tonight, and they're fitting, very fitting. So, but one of them, I don't even know where it comes from. The quote is simply, "I am self-governing. I don't need a middleman between myself and my freedom." And I think that does, in part, express the sentiment of the show and maybe of tonight's episode. And the other one, I'm going to have the two of you make the attempt to guess who this quote comes from. It's a famous person in history. So we're going to hands-on buzzers. "Every man and every body of men on earth possesses the right of self-government."
Ray Rothbard.
Wrong. Brad, give it a whirl.
Harry Truman.
Nope.
Mises.
Thomas Jefferson. Let me read it again. I think it's a very good one. And again, I think it shocks people that it came from Thomas Jefferson to some degree. "Every man and every body of men on earth possesses the right of self-government." This comes from Thomas Jefferson, a signer of the Declaration of the Independence and of the Constitution, right? I think he was one of the John Hancocks on there,
I believe so.
Right? So and as Brad has said before, this show or the topics we discuss and the way we discuss them maybe seem definitely out of the mainstream. But I would argue a lot of it is, historical, that it's not so radical. I mean, these thoughts have been here for a long time. They are in part in the Constitution and other important documents in the United States. So it's not that I would argue our course has just taken us away from that.
Thomas Jefferson and John Locke, I believe, had a lot in common.
Yes, they did.
But I should not have guessed an economist. That was my fault.
Yes, that was your fault.
I should have guessed a philosopher. Darn.
It was Locke who what did Jefferson write? Right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And John Locke was life, liberty, and property.
Correct. That's where Jefferson got that phrase from. So you're correct. They shared a bit.
You know who'd be good on this show?
John Locke.
Emily.
See? Where is she? Dial her up.
I'm not going to put her on the spot like that.
You're not going to do that?
No.
See, that's how I do things. I like to put people on the spot. Anyway, quickly, just some announcements before we kind of get to our current events. AgoraFest 2015 at Villa Maria Conference Center and Retreat, September 24th to the 27th. Again, like I say every time, we'll have Nick on eventually here. I have not been watching my episodes of Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do from Harvard Business School, but I still have episode 6 is up there. That was a great episode, by the way. If anyone has any interest, I would strongly recommend you check that out. Another one, we'll have to put Brad on the spot. Ask him, Brad, have you seen the documentary Citizen 4?
I have not.
See?
Fail.
Yeah, that's the Edward Snowden documentary with his discussions with Glenn Greenwald. Excellent documentary. I know Aleks has seen it.
I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. It's not your Friday night movie to watch an action-packed, jump out of your seat kind of a thing.
I did feel like it was a little intense, though. It did have a little bit of an action-y vibe because of how tense the situation was there in Hong Kong. You felt like he could have been caught at any second, which is the case. He could have been.
It is, but I think most people would find it...
The Avengers is a little bit more action-packed, yes.
Yes. No, but most people would find they have to expend a fair amount of energy to pay attention and follow and listen to it closely, right? You can't sort of half pay attention and get it. Right?
And wouldn't one need to go into it with an open mind as well a little bit?
I actually don't think so. I think you could just watch it as, hey, check it out. This is what happened.
Okay.
I think you could if you wanted to, and Actually, you probably should watch it that way, and then maybe towards the end start going, okay, well, this guy was a screwed up idiot and he caused all kinds of problems, or, hey, I kind of like what he did. What he did makes sense.
I think you should go in with an open mind and formulate your opinion at the end.
Yeah, I think that was the point I was trying to make, is that as in every current events news story, something that has any legs at all in the media, I think it's very easy for people to have a very predetermined position on whether this guy's good or bad.
Exactly, especially seeing as it was so inflammatory when it happened.
Absolutely.
People definitely made up their minds. Either I like the NSA, I don't like the NSA. I like Edward Snowden, I don't like him. He's a freedom fighter, he's a terrorist. I think you need to drop that at the door. I think you need to watch it and reevaluate.
I would encourage people.
Agree.
I would encourage people to do that, but I just think the guys who are completely made up one way or the other, I don't think this documentary is going to change your mind. I mean, I just don't think so.
That's true, but there are plenty of people in the middle ground that don't have such hard feelings but think one way. And I think you might be... The documentary does come full circle in the end. There are some sort of, I feel like, maybe startling revelations in the end.
Yes.
Or
no,
maybe
no spoilers.
Just possibly somebody might watch this and go, huh, I guess I see this a little bit differently now. I guess that's my point.
Yes.
I mean, I thought I followed the Snowden case at least pretty well, more than I thought most people do.
Probably you did.
But I still found out plenty of new information in this movie.
Well, and
there was way more to it than I thought.
To Alex's spoiler alert.
No spoilers, I said.
Oh, no.
That's not a spoiler alert.
All right, no, here we go. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm going to give you a key piece of information, because I had some friends who watched this, and afterwards they said to me, what is POTUS?
Oh, yes.
POTUS.
I remember, actually, that was me. I asked what was POTUS.
Well, you're not the only one.
I was one of those guys.
Okay, so for our audience, and by the way, the link to the documentary is on the Facebook page. You'll probably have to scroll down now because I put it on there a while ago, but it is there. But for that, Alex...
Brad, what do you think it is?
POTUS.
POTUS.
I could make a joke, but I won't.
So, Alex, explain what POTUS is.
President of the United States.
That is a little key at the end of the near the end of the documentary.
They draw a diagram and it goes to POTUS. There it is. Spoiler alert. Movie over. Now you guys don't have to watch it.
Yeah. No, there's a little more in between that part, but...
Oh, there is?
Yes. Anyway.
Is this a code name for our president? We don't need to double in this.
For short, yes.
Yeah, it's just a short version.
Okay.
So anyway, Citizen4. Strongly recommend people check that out.
So wait, does our government keep secrets from us? Is
No.
that what you're trying to say?
No. 100% transparent.
The most transparent administration ever.
Well, they all are, right?
Yes, they all are. But this POTUS is emphasize that as well.
Little known fact.
Yeah.
Yes, he is very outspoken about that, isn't he?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just move on. I recently read Conscience of an Anarchist by Gary Chartier, who is a former guest of ours. Excellent book. Excellent book from the standpoint that it's very readable and very clear. If you are an expert in this area, you probably make the case that, hey, I didn't really learn anything new here. There's not a whole lot of new philosophical underpinnings or anything like that. And I would argue you're probably correct. But it is an excellent book. It fills in a lot of blanks for, I think, it would fill in the blanks for a whole big slice of our society. So I think it's very relevant, very well written. Strongly recommend that. Also, that link is on the Facebook page, and again, you'll have to scroll down because it was a while ago where I last posted it. We can, of course, repost that. Anyway, I see Lisa's texting me saying she's having troubles finding the thing. Lisa, if you're, well, she's not listening to me. I'll have here. text her and tell her to go to Spreaker.com.
See, this is the co-host job.
Yeah, this is the co-host jobs. I call him the producer/co-host. 2 more items to go through. Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Full text available online for free at fee.org. That's also an awesome book, Economics in One Lesson. Relatively easy read and, very relevant information there, obviously, about economics. fee.org. That link I posted, but again, you could just go to fee.org, fee.org, and you can find it on there. And the last thing is the chat room is open. So let me see. And nobody's in there at the moment. Anyway, Lisa's saying she's having trouble finding it, but if you go through Spreaker, I think you should have an easier time. Anyway, news stories. And I know the top, I believe the one that Brad has some interest in is the Indiana, what is it called? The Religious
Freedom Act.
RFA. That has been in the news here for the last however many days. Actually, it's kind of an interesting saga. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Brad.
Well, I was going to get your boys' thoughts, because I've certainly had a lot of thoughts myself about this, about just I'll go ahead and I'll even pitch underhanded.
Okay.
About basically the redundancy of this act.
Yes.
And how it should or should not, where it is in line with the philosophy of liberty.
Yes.
And I know the answer to this, but I think we should share it with our audience. And before you answer, I'm just going to say that this is a long format show. This is Tom always says it. I like the way he says it. That this is a show that you're not going to listen to for 10 minutes and go, oh, I get what they're talking about. You might get what we're talking about, but you may not get the context of the entire perspective of the philosophy of liberty that is Tom is so very passionate about, and Alex.
It's kind of like trying to explain someone all of physics in 5 minutes, and if they can't explain it to you, you say, it's not for me.
Right, exactly.
And we had Tanya on last week, and she said, well, I beg to differ. I call it kindergartnerism. But I think what she was... I would argue that we were actually not disagreeing on it. It's the overall description of liberty may be, in fact, kindergartnerism. Basically, keep your mitts off of other people's stuff. Okay.
Well, but I think that there's all these viewpoints of what people think that liberty is.
No doubt. And then, of course, how a free society might work. That's a longer explanation. Yeah. And again, they're just mights. I can't tell you what the free market will develop, what it will stay away from, what the market demands, what it doesn't demand. That's not up for me to know.
It's like asking you to tell me the future. It's a little difficult.
Right.
That is true.
Okay, so the Religious Freedom Act of my fine home state of Indiana that's disgracing itself so badly. So would you guys not agree that most people would interpret the Constitution as giving us all the right to religious freedom, or that perception that most people would have, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the general idea, I think.
And so, again, what the heck? Why do I need a state law that tells me that I have that right again?
Because I will make the case here, or I'll read this article from, I hope I'm reading the right article. Well, let me see here. Yes, I think this is the one. This is, let me cite this. It's by Mark Joseph Stern, who on Outward, I think, is the site from Slate. Anyway, it's entitled, Mike Pence is either lying or deluded about Indiana's religious freedom law. And, of course, Mike Pence is the governor of Indiana.
Yeah, okay.
All right, let me just read a little bit about this, because I think it sheds light on just what actually the point you were talking about, and I think it's important. Because, like you said, why do I need a law if I already have religious freedom is essentially the question that you pose there. And I'll just read this, try to get through it a little quickly. It's not that long, but I think it addresses that. Again, this is the author Mark Joseph Stern. He says, on Tuesday, Indiana Governor Mike Pence delivered a rambling, irate press conference at which he professed to support a new bill that would, quote-unquote, clarify his state's new religious liberty law. That measure, of course, has come under severe criticism for potentially granting businesses a license to discriminate against gays and lesbians based on their owners' religious preferences. Following several days of unrelenting high-profile censure, Pence has decided it wouldn't hurt to strip the law of its discriminatory power. At the same time, however, he continues to insist that the law, as originally passed, does nothing to permit discrimination and merely mirrors similar measures passed by 19 other states and the federal government. So I think he's done a good job there, basically, of reiterating what this is about. He says if Pence is not intentionally lying, he is incredibly stupid. His claims are Tuesday were verifiably untrue. Nothing more than a stream of blatant falsehoods. The debate over Indiana's religious freedom law isn't a matter of opinion. It is a question of truth versus fiction, and Pence made it clear on Tuesday that he has chosen fiction. Here's the easily substantiated truth behind the bill. Its supporters explicitly intended it to legalize discrimination against gay people, especially gay couples who lately have faced discrimination from florist bakers and photographers who refuse to serve them. To ensure the law achieved this goal, its drafter inserted two monumentally important provisions, and I think this gets to the crux of it, neither of which is found in the federal religious freedom law signed by President Bill Clinton. So, first, the bill explicitly permits for-profit businesses to exercise their religious beliefs rather than limiting its effects to regular human beings. I find that statement a little curious. But second, the bill protects businesses against private lawsuits in addition to state suits. And I'm just going to leave it there. There's more to the article, of course. But he's saying that they specifically put these two provisions in the bill, right, with the idea being that, Aleks is a 20-year-old guy of German descent. If I don't happen to like 20-year-old guys of German descent, and my religion, the morality I guess I learned from my religion is that, those are bad dudes. They're not in concert with my religion, however you want to describe it. I don't have to associate with them. Or my religion, I don't know if forbids is the right word, discourages me from associating with them. So when he comes into my place of business, wants to do business with me, based on my religious preferences, I don't really want to associate with him. Now there's some legal support for that protects me from being sued by Aleks and his ilk, let's just say.
Alex's ilk. I like
yes.
it.
All right, and that's what I think this author here has done a good job of pointing that out in the Indiana law. By the way, I think in the federal law, a certain Barack Hussein Obama was one who also supported that and pushed it, I believe. Now, again, supposedly, I have not read the federal law, but supposedly the federal law doesn't have those same two provisions that are supposedly unique to the Indiana law. So I'm not laying that on Obama. It doesn't really matter to me, but I know to some of our listeners it really does matter.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a point. And to the author's point, what was it? I think it was in Arizona somewhere. It was a baker, if I remember right, got requested to bake a cake for, I think it was a gay wedding.
Yep. I'm not sure there wasn't in Indiana. I'm sure it's happened more than once.
I would think so, right? But I think there's 2 points here. and if I remember right, it was Sheldon Richman wrote an article early, just in the last day or two or three, and he says, again, as a freedom advocate, that would, if such a society were ever to come about, one of the provisions there is you would have the freedom to associate, right? And you say, okay, well, I got no problem with that. I can associate with anybody I want to. In other words, not to use the word associate, you could do business also with other people. That's a type of association. I think some people separate those two, where they think it's more of on a social basis, associate. But go ahead.
But conversely, would that same Freedom Act, if you will, that you're alluding to, also let me choose with whom I associate?
Absolutely.
Who you associate and disassociate with.
Disassociate is the key.
Thank you.
Right? That's the point. If you have the freedom to associate...
Finish the cake story, though. Where was the cake story going?
I'll go there in a second.
Yeah, good point. My mistake. Go ahead.
But if you had the freedom to associate, you definitely have the freedom to not associate as well, is that point, that little sub-point. But we'll get back to that here in a second because we're going to do the cake. And Brad, you may know the terms of this better than I do, or the specifics, right? I thought it was an Arizona case. A guy walked in, and I know there was one, and maybe it was also in Arizona, where a guy walked in and he wanted to reserve a lodge, a setting, a reception area for his wedding. And later the lodge or whatever found out that it actually was going to be a gay wedding. I assume they assumed it was a straight wedding, right? And when they found out, then they came forward and said, I think we're booked. This was after they actually booked him. And then it somehow did come out that, well, we kind of booked somebody else because we didn't want to have a gay wedding here. Or at least the reception. I think maybe the wedding and the reception same place. And the same basic circumstance happened at this bakery. And again, I thought it was Arizona, but I may be mistaken there. That
I'm not arguing. That's fine.
The deal was, apparently at the bakery, though, it came out right away that it was a gay deal. And they said, but no, we don't do cakes for, I don't know, gay associations. I don't know what you call it. Gay, right? So there was lawsuits filed in both of those cases. And again, I think the lodge one actually got settled. I don't know if it came to a court decision there. But regardless, the whole point is, under the current law, essentially, and again, every state is different, but largely, you as a proprietor, you have what I would argue is forced association. You have to do business with anybody who walks in the door that wants to do business with you.
Isn't this sort of the same thing as the whole banking crisis? You had to give loans to people that you didn't think could pay back loans?
Yeah, they were forced by law because they couldn't, there was a law passed so they couldn't discriminate, right? And against people who basically couldn't qualify, and especially, if I understand what happened, was of people of color. Because they said, hey, wait a minute, 80% of the people who...
Even if it was a predominantly white town.
Yes.
You had to get your quota.
Yes, and if 80% of the people of color who came in there got rejected for their loans, assuming that by and large they couldn't qualify for them, the state, they got audited, said you can't do that. That's discriminatory. Well, they're like, hey, if we can't do that, that means we have to accept these loans to these people, and we know they can't pay them back. That was all part of the financial bubble, but that's a part that's really not talked about. It was just that people said the banks did risky stuff, and then the taxpayer bailed them out, which is actually true.
They were kind of forced to do some risky stuff.
Yes, and not in all cases, of course, but in some cases it did. But anyway, people have this word discrimination is so misused in my view.
I think it's even taboo. You're just not allowed to. You're a bad person if you discriminate.
Yes, and let me be...
I'm not saying you are a bad person. I'm saying that's what most people think.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. That word is so misused because I discriminate all the time. As an employer, I try to hire only the hardest working people. And I know some people go, well, that's not discrimination. Of course it's actually it's not the legal definition of it today.
You discriminate against lazy people.
Yeah, I try to hire people who will make me more money, who will be more productive, right? I'm highly discriminatory when I was looking for a date.
I'm highly discriminatory against arsonists.
Yes, I'm highly discriminatory against people who've stolen stuff from me. I just kind of count them out, right? This notion of discrimination, I think, has been widely distorted. Misconstrued. But let's now get back into the context of the Indiana law.
Religious Freedom Act.
And the religious freedom thing. It's really a lot before this, and to be honest, I don't know exactly what was on the books in Indiana, but assuming that you could not discriminate. I'm a fanatical Catholic person. I'm the Pope. I am the Pope, and I happen to own a bakery in Indianapolis. And a gay guy walks in there and says, "Hey, I want the gayest looking cake ever." I don't even know what that is, but okay, I'm just trying to be facetious here.
Rainbows.
I want a rainbow cake. I don't know, right? And I say, "Hey, I'm what's the Pope now? I can't Pope. It's not Pope Paul. I can't think of his name."
Yikes.
Yes, exactly. I'm Pope Tom, and I'm.
Oh no, we're in trouble now.
Yeah, we're really in trouble if I'm the Pope, right? But I'm Pope Tom, and I think you're what is it? You're damned to hell. I don't know exactly what the Pope would say, right? So I don't do business with you. I know you, as a person who walked into that store, you probably wouldn't be happy. You would feel maybe uncomfortable. You would feel discriminated against. I'm using air quotes, right? I don't know exactly all the feelings you might have. I'm not saying that's a wonderful situation, but I'm saying the remedy that has been proposed, essentially forcing them to associate, also does not work, and in fact makes it worse.
Yeah, you're probably not going to get the service you want. They're going to spit in your cake for sure.
Yes, right? It's not going to help. So I would say if you're two parties and you're seeking agreement and one party member does not want to enter into an agreement with you,
it is no longer voluntary exchange.
yes, and it's probably not to your benefit even to engage in such a, even if you're the party who wants to engage in, or initially wanted to engage in the agreement, right? You say, great, you don't want to deal with me? I'd like to move on and find somebody who does really want to work with me. That's what I'm saying is the better actually remedy, partly.
I believe it would help the situation if that were the case, because if you were forced to do something you don't want to do, Pope Tom makes the cake.
Yep, Pope Tom.
He's actually probably going to be more PO'd at gays in general because he was now forced to do something he doesn't want to do.
Yes, that's my point. I believe it actually makes it worse.
So the whole situation gets a little inflamed.
Right. And think of what's happening here if there were such, if I was forced to do so. The force, in fact, would change my behavior likely, right? Pope Tom will make your rainbow cake, right? But it probably hardens my attitude, and it does nothing to change my mind. In fact, of course, I think pushes my mind, quote unquote, the wrong way, right? So laws can change behaviors. I do not deny that. But what we're trying to do on this show, and what I think is...
I have one here. I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Wait, just let me finish. Is the higher level thing to do is actually persuade and to educate. That leads to permanent change. The bad description, better change. I know that's not a good description, but okay, you were going to make a point.
Okay, so you're forced to make me a cake. What if, because you are forced to make me a cake, we end up having a great interaction that you would not have had before because you would have just denied me, and therefore now you're a supporter of the gay community. Pope Tom has changed his ways.
Entirely possible. I would not deny that for an instant. There's many things that I've done in my life that I initially didn't want to do, and not only afterwards said, that actually wasn't so bad. I might say, that was actually pretty darn good.
Asparagus was for me. That was mine.
Asparagus is it? Right? So
Arsonists were for me.
Yeah, arson. There you go.
I still don't like them.
All I'm saying is, on balance, again, those exceptions can exist, but I would again call them exceptions. On balance, it's a net loss.
I was playing devil's advocate. I would think if you're actually forced in the situation, you probably would be more upset about it.
How many times
You're less likely to actually even have a pleasant conversation with them. You're, all right, fine.
Right. And people do this now. I think it's become, in a sense, second nature to use the force of law to get what you want. I think, obviously, it's a mechanism essentially available to everyone.
You can sue someone for anything. You can rob someone's house, fall through their roof, land on a knife, and sue them for stabbing you.
Or having unsafe conditions or whatever it is. Right?
And I think that's one of the points that I wanted to make with this is how laws can be used as weapons.
Yes. And I think in this particular instance, the better avenue for the gay lesbian community is basically the same avenue we're choosing on the show, is to educate and persuade. If I really have a superior argument here, right, for a free society is the better argument, it will win. Now, maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not tomorrow, but I believe ultimately it has to win. Or, like we talked about earlier today, Alex, mankind wipes itself out because of wars and other things.
I would argue the same thing happened with the whole slavery situation. I think the resentment in the South was I don't think you can even argue. It was definitely still there. That's why we had all these problems. But the North, where the abolitionist community was already there,
Lysander Spooner.
They had writers, they had authors that were educating people on why you should not have slaves.
Yeah, how is it that the North, in fact, was anti-slavery and the South was
Abolitionists.
Yeah, and the South was essentially pro-slavery? How is it that can exist?
Well, their industry, for one.
Well, they had a different set of incentives, right? I wouldn't argue that.
7th grade history is coming up.
But I think you could also make the case that if I was an industrialist in the North back in the day, could my advantage have even been bigger? Because theoretically, in a mass production system, assembly line, if you will,
Factories,
people are more productive than they were in agriculture. So I actually could have a better incentive to have slaves in the North than they did in the South. Right? I don't know if that's actually true, but I think it's possibly true. But I think my point is there was still something yet different. And to be sure, the set of incentives were not exactly the same. They never are. But my argument basically rests on, Lysander Spooner happened to live in the Boston area, the North. He wasn't from the South. There was other people who were abolitionists
abolitionist newspapers were a big thing, and they were the ones that got burned down during they would be writing too much about being an abolitionist,
right,
and they'd get their whole place torched.
And so even if you were an abolitionist and you were originally from the South, you might have had an affinity to get to the North where it's safer and your place wouldn't get burned down and you might not be threatened as frequently and stuff, right? So I'm not saying that didn't happen. Maybe that did happen. There was people from the South but again, they came to the North for that relative safety, security. I don't know what the right description is there. But so in fact, there's something different, and there was something different in the North than the South. And the deal is, in my view, is they were more educated on this topic. I'm not saying the people in the North were smarter than the people in the South. I'm just saying on this topic they were more educated and obviously at some point persuaded. And I'm saying if that same power, which is a misuse of the word, was applied to the South rather than war, I think could have the slaves could have been freed without all the deaths that were involved in what became the Civil War. So what I'm saying is basically the same idea should be applied today to this religious freedom, this discrimination against, in this case, gays, lesbians.
Education is the answer.
Education is always the answer, and persuasion. It's the only non-violent means. Go ahead, Brad, sorry.
And dialogue.
Yes, that's how you do it, right?
Yes.
The dialogue, that's how you do it. And again, just like on the show, we don't have enough listeners. People don't pay attention enough. And again, the people who are listening to this show are hearing me basically whine about not enough listeners, which is unfair. I get that. But I guess I'm just venting some of my frustration over this, which would be the same frustration in all these cases, essentially.
I think the thing that is interesting here, though, is that racism, sexism, homophobia, these are not innate in humans. They're learned.
Yes.
I don't think any child wakes up and just goes, I don't like black people today. It's a societal view that they see,
They adapt.
Exactly.
Adopt.
I think it's a monkey see, monkey do situation. They grew up like that. They didn't even know any better.
Yes. It's something I would argue is unnatural to discriminate in such a way. I mean, again, if the free market were allowed to operate, if you happen to be gay and I don't like gays, again, I'm Pope Tom, and I don't hire you for my business, turns out you're the best operator of the machine I needed operated. Ultimately, I pay a penalty for my stupidity or for my discriminatory behavior. And I think the faster way to overcome that is for me to understand, well, my competitor has now hired this guy who's highly productive, who's now kicking my butt, basically. That was a mistake. I don't think I'm going to let that happen again, because eventually I'm going to financial ruin here. So even the greedy capitalist who's only worried about profits, I believe, will come around in relatively short order.
If you were only worried about profits, you'd take the job.
Yeah, if you truly were only worried about profits, it's like I'd hire the guy because he's going to make me money. I could care less what he is. And that, again, that's a way of discriminating. You're discriminating to the more productive person. That's the one you want.
That's you.
That's me. So anyway, anything I seriously have like 5 articles on this, but I think we've kind of covered. I'll post the articles on the Facebook page so people can see the references that we looked at. But is there another aspect of this, Brad, that we have not covered in your view?
It's hard for me to watch the news reports and not go, well, I guess I'm back to the redundant thing. Isn't this just silly? Because, like you guys said, maybe I'm just trying to punctuate this whole thing. In a free society, a person would have the ability to, as you guys said, associate or disassociate. We all do this all the time.
Yes.
You guys have taught me that our current system, with its laws and its process, and I really struck a chord with some people over the weekend in a little discussion, but it legislates morality. And so here we're using a law to legislate this group who has managed to get this forwards, morality for everybody to behave in a certain manner.
Yes, and the idea of legislating morality does not allow anyone to be moral, because I can't do the moral thing. I just got to do the legal thing. Otherwise, they'll put me in a box or they'll take my money away. Mm-hmm. Right? So when you have the capacity to make that quote-unquote mistake of being immoral, that's when you actually should get credit for doing the moral thing, if that's what you in fact did.
If this law says what it says it should do, I actually agree with the law in this case, but I wouldn't say actually discriminate against gays. I think that's a bad decision, but you can make your own decision.
Right. People should
But
be
you should
allowed.
have the freedom to do it if you would like.
Yeah, you should be allowed to make bad decisions.
You can be a bigot if you want.
Right. But you're going to bear the consequences of those. That's the kind of the cool thing about freedom.
I love what you guys both just said because that's spot on.
Yeah, I think that's important. That and again, I think people tend to look for a remedy that will fix because hey, I'm gay. I don't want to walk into a bakery and them not do business with me. And I'm a 53-year-old gray-haired German guy, and I don't really want to walk into a place where they go, hey, we don't deal with 53-year-old German guys. But
on the other hand, how many people do you have to deal with that say that versus how many gays have to deal with we don't?
Absolutely. It's much more prevalent in that community, I'm assuming, than it is in mine. I think people don't even know what nationality I am from a lot, right? People don't, it's not written on my forehead. It's maybe harder to detect. So I, in fact, of course, don't deal with it as much. So,
all good points. And Alex, I agree with you that in theory, I agree with this law, and Liberty would agree with this law,
right?
But not in the manner that it's being forced, or not in the manner it's being played.
I think it's also a marketing game. The whole idea of the law is now it's twisted into this humongous thing that I don't think it was ever meant to be that way. And I can see why it riled up certain communities. Because I wouldn't want someone to say, well, you can be discriminated against. It doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound nice. It doesn't sound fun or fair.
Or pleasant.
But it is in line with liberty.
Yes.
Liberty is not necessarily fair. It's just you don't have the government retribution.
Yeah, it's sanctioned. There's no. It's not subject to sanction behind it, right? And it's liberty doesn't legalize coercive force. All right. That's maybe if you sum this whole show up, that's what, for me. I'm against legalizing coercion. That doesn't mean coercion wouldn't happen. I'm just saying if it did, then you'd be subject to sanction. Whereas today we have legalized coercion. Right? That means you can the state mostly can coerce me, and there's no sanction. There's nothing I can do about it. It's like, okay,
you either go along with it or you get thrown in a box.
Right. So that's the issue there.
All great points. Thank you.
I think we have this topic wrapped.
Okay. John
This is the
King.
Annoying Peasant Radio Show. Let's remind everybody.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
And thanks, yes, very much for joining us. We're on, normally, 90% plus of the time, we're on Tuesday nights, 7 Central live. You can find us at freedomtalkradio.net or at Spreaker.com. And, of course, anytime, 24/7, as it were, the Facebook page is available to comment on. And that's obviously facebook.com/annoyingpeasantradio. There's a couple more issues, topical things that I thought were interesting. I guess I'll just mention one that I don't know if it really is interesting, and I don't even have it on my list, but I just, the airliner crash last week. Boy, that soaked up a lot of media coverage. They always do.
People are fascinated with plane crashes. They sensationalize it.
Yeah.
More than 120 people died in car crashes alone that day. Way more. Yet, since 120 people died on one flight, it's a crazy big deal, and I don't want to fly a plane anymore.
Right. And I feel bad for everyone, obviously, who was on that plane. Obviously. I mean, I feel kind of weird even saying it because...
It's so obvious.
Yeah. Are you kidding me? I need to say that. But, yeah, just a weird deal, right? If you think about it, though, what are the chances that, hey, I'm on a flight and the co-pilot is going to try to kill us all, right? And
It's a freak accident.
yeah, that's
Incident.
Very good. Okay, moving on. That's all I just wanted to mention that. Actually, one other thing I wanted to mention, and it's in the political arena. As far as I could tell, the news today was on the Hillary Clinton email. You got to use the word gate and everything. I don't know how if they've done that yet, but
Emailgate.
Emailgate.
If not, let's get it trending now. #Emailgate. Everyone, we can do it.
It's not Hillary Gate.
It's something gate. It's got to be. Otherwise, it's not a scandal if it doesn't have gate attached to the end of it, right? Anyway, the deal was...
You're tuned into Liberty Gate.
Yes, Liberty Gate. That's
Hashtag
it.
Liberty Gate. Let's get that trending too, folks.
But, the deal was supposedly Hillary was not using the official government email. She was using a server apparently out of her house because of the convenience of it, because she only wanted to use one device, blah, blah, blah. Comes out supposedly today, if I'm completely up to date. I think I'm largely up to date. She actually was using two devices anyway. So her excuse to use one device. And, of course, the only reason I'm really mentioning this is I know the House wants her, under oath. And, of course, why does the House really want her under oath? Well, because she's a potential presidential nominee.
They just want to shame her in front of a bunch of people.
Yo, you bet they do. They want to put her out there and...
It's a political adversary.
Yeah.
Plus, now that the House is all Republicans.
I'm not defending her. I'm not saying she's a good person. I'm not saying she was a good ambassador. I'm not saying, none of that. I'm just saying, for political purposes, they want to stab her. And I'm also not saying the contrary. I'm not making any comment on her performance, as it were.
I 100% agree with Hillary Clinton. I like Gmail, too.
Oh, very good.
So why does it matter what the context of whether the context of her emails get out or not? I mean, if our government's also transparent.
Yes, exactly. And that was part of the story, I think, today, too, that she handed over, of the official emails that she handed over, apparently it was 3. The number of official emails that she handed over.
It wasn't a big deal at all. It's just some sort of political tit for tat.
It's important to the bureaucracy because it is a secret bureaucracy, and for her to have this stuff potentially even open is a faux pas in the secret world, in the NSA world in which we live in, right? So it's important to them. I mean, I'm all for more transparency, and I would, again, I'm not for the existence of the state in the first place. So if it were up to me, none of this would even exist. But since it exists, it has to be transparent. But again, I would advocate for it to just not exist. That's the better remedy in my view. But so these types of situations present themselves as a lot of, I don't know what, internal conflicts for the freedom supporter, because again, they may necessarily believe that the state shouldn't even exist, and then there may be a law that got passed that they might disagree with, and then there's another law that gets passed, like in the case of Indiana, that you maybe agree with, but it's a convoluted mess of crap is the problem.
And there's usually a lot of other sneaky stuff attached to said law.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a clean law, right? So anyway, just thought I'd throw those couple things out there. Another one I just want to throw out, the John Kerry Iraq nuke agreement.
I thought it was Iran.
Sorry, Iran. I did say Iraq. Iran. Thank you. I misspoke. The Iran thing, they're going to burn the midnight oil to get this deal done.
I heard they just pushed it back.
Yes.
Because it's a fictitious thing. Kind of like the debt ceiling?
Yeah. The deadline is just, if you're going to run up against it, you just move it. And now we have a new deadline.
It's extremely important we get this done by midnight.
Yes.
Okay, so we moved it till later because we didn't get it done.
Yes.
Oh, not that midnight. The other midnight.
Yes.
I meant next midnight. You guys should have known what I was saying.
So I just think for me, it's a little bit of humor because these guys take this, at least it's portrayed as so serious. Well, if it's so stinking serious, you'd have to get it done.
See, this is what you don't get, Dad. The state is a joke.
Oh, sorry.
It's one big joke.
I didn't. It's not very funny, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, being in the box is not funny.
Yeah. So anyway, the whole deal is they don't want Iran. When I say they, I don't. Who exactly am I talking about? I don't even know.
United Nations, kind of.
Blah, 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 right? They're trying to prevent Iran from getting nuclear bomb capability. And there's a couple of problems with them. The main one, I'll just say, the cat's out of the bag. It's, ultimately, it's a technology thing. Technology moves on. Yes, in some places a whole lot slower than others. I get that. But
also, it's not like we're trying to remove all the nuclear stuff from Iran. From what it seems like, let's say they had 100 reactors or whatever. They're like, We only want you to have 25. Well, you can't learn how to build a bomb on 25.
And the enrichment capability and all this crap. So now you got to monitor the crap out of them to make sure that they're. And how do we know when they're not doing it in another location? Blah blah.
Iran
blah.
is also very transparent.
Yes, there you go. So it just seems like, and then you have Netanyahu saying, if they do this deal within a year, Iran will have a bomb. How many times have I heard within a year Iran's going to have the bomb? And again, there will be some year where they'll get the bomb.
When are we getting flying cars? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
They keep saying within a couple of years we're going to be flying cars.
Yeah, keep dreaming. All right. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. If this is so stinking important, how does it get delayed? I don't know. My detractors will say, Tom, you don't understand the complexities involved. Yeah,
I do love the way they do it, though, is we have sanctions, which we've talked about before, and how effective those are, and how we're going to loosen up the sanctions for trading the fact that if you don't make a bomb, we won't sanction you guys as much.
I believe they actually backed off, at least on some of the sanctions, because I heard the other day Boehner saying he's going to get more sanctions on Iran. So just adding to the soup of crap. Okay. Moving on. Did you see this one? Did you hear this one? Obama proposes making voting mandatory.
Ooh, actually, I really like this topic. Because they do this in certain countries, as you may know. Yeah. Australia being one of them.
Russia, I believe, is one of them.
Well, that's funny, too.
Yeah, but did you hear this story, Brad?
No kidding.
Did you hear the story? Serious?
Do you also have to vote for Putin?
Yes, that's also
mandatory. You vote for Putin.
Yes, it makes the participation rate go up, and the support for the president is amazing that way.
I heard if you vote for the other guy, they just take him out in the street and kill him.
yeah, they do. But we've talked on this show about voting. Whether it's effective. Blah blah blah. I don't know all, but a lot of aspects to the voting issue. We talked about that many times on this show in the past. My view is, I stay away from that because I think it's a poor mechanism. I do think it's largely ineffective, and I think it also shows participation in the system, blah, blah, blah. There's a number of reasons, right? But here's the icing on the cake for me is what I want to get to. This just reinforced, in my view, that I'm right, right? Because if it was really a good thing, everybody would be doing it, right? If they really wanted to do it, you wouldn't have to pass a law to make it mandatory. And I realize the law hasn't passed yet. Well, I know you go, hey, you're way ahead of things here. But when I hear, and again, I'm not just picking on Obama. He happens to be the fellow in the White House at the moment. I don't care what the next name is. It doesn't really matter to me. When I hear them say, this should be mandatory, or we're going to propose it, or we're going to make it be there, or whatever, I'm thinking, that proves it's a bad idea to me, right? To me, that's the icing on the cake.
Those were my favorite things in high school. Anything mandatory. All the kids wanted to go to those.
Yeah. It's such a good idea. We'll force you to do it.
Exactly.
Right? It just doesn't seem to follow in my line of thinking.
One of my favorites, actually, with mandatory voting is certain countries do it, and it comes up with a lot of joke candidates or parody candidates. A clown will run for office, and because it's mandatory and people don't like it so much, they will vote a clown or a dog or anything into office.
Right.
So their elected leaders are now not like they're great now, but it gets way worse. Actually, you know what? Maybe a dog is better. He can't do as much.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else there? Brad, you have anything on that?
No. I just found, you're very outspoken about the voting mechanism, and I think that is something that a lot of people would, at face value, and I did as well when we first started, talking and exchanging thoughts, and you started teaching me is, hey, that's my privilege, that's my right, that's my privilege. I'm, because we're free, we have this right to vote.
The right to vote. You should not be forced to.
Exactly right.
Okay. I want to move on to another one because, again, we got to get really going on this show. And maybe, who knows, we'll even get to the topic at hand as usual. But this is I think this is a very interesting one. if I remember right, I can verify that this guy his last name is Ford. Let me see if I'm.
Please tell me this is Rob Ford,
No.
the ex-mayor of Toronto.
No.
Darn.
No. Glenn Ford is this fella's name. I know I'm being very vague right now. You're going, what the heck are you talking about? I'm doing this on purpose to try to. The few people who have heard this are slowly going, oh, yeah.
The suspense builds.
Yes. There's a fella by the name, he was an attorney, A.M. Marty Stroud III of Shreveport, Louisiana. This fellow was the lead prosecutor in the December 1984 first-degree murder trial of Glenn Ford, who was sentenced to death for the November 5th, 1983 death of Shreveport jeweler Isidore Roseman. Ford was released from prison March 11th, 2014, after the state admitted new evidence proving Ford was not the killer. So here there's a dude who was in jail 30 years, right? After the state admitted new evidence proving Ford was not the killer. Stroud, who was again the prosecuting attorney, is responding to an editorial in the March 6th edition of the Times that urged the state to now give Ford justice by not fighting compensation allowed for those wrongfully convicted. I got to go back to another thing. Okay, so here's a quote from the prosecuting attorney regarding this case. So he's now 30 years later looking back at what he did, right? Here we go. My mindset was wrong and blinded me to my purpose of seeking justice rather than obtaining a conviction of a person who I believed to be guilty. But think about that one sentence. My mindset was wrong and blinded me to my purpose of seeking justice rather than obtaining a conviction of a person who I believed to be guilty. So he actually did believe he was guilty, right? But he's saying my mindset was wrong and it should have been about seeking justice. Okay, and people go, well, if you thought he was guilty, well, then justice was convicting him, right? But there is a little fine line there. Okay, and that's only the first sentence, but I think this is very important. I did not hide evidence, he says. I simply could not seriously consider that sufficient information may have been out there that could have led to a different conclusion. And that omission is on me. In 1984, I was 33 years old. I was arrogant, judgmental, narcissistic, and very full of myself. I was not as interested in justice as I was in winning. To borrow a phrase from Al Pacino in the movie And Justice for All, winning became everything. After the verdict in the Ford trial, I went out with others and celebrated with a few rounds of drinks. That's sick. I had been entrusted with the duty to seek the death of a fellow human being, a very solemn task that certainly did not warrant any celebration. I now realize all too painfully that as a young 33-year-old prosecutor, I was not capable of making a decision that could have led to the killing of another human being. No one should be given the ability to impose a sentence of death in any criminal proceeding. We are simply incapable of devising a system that can fairly and impartially impose a sentence of death because we are all fallible human beings. What do you think of that?
Sounds like he's not for the death penalty.
It sounds like he's not for the death penalty, but I think he says a whole lot more than that.
Nope, that's all I got.
That's all you got? All right, sweet.
I'm out.
You're out. Your thoughts, Brad? Any reaction to that?
I think it speaks volumes about our system.
Yes, I was going to say, I was hoping you were going to just tweak that a little bit and say, I think it speaks volumes of what we've been saying on this show for the last 2-3 years.
Well, that's why we criticize our system on this show.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
Because the system of incentives that are in place are perverse, right? And I think this guy should certainly get some credit, the prosecuting attorney, for, some people argue a little too late. Too little, too late. I can't, if I'm saying that right. And in the case of Glenn Ford, yes. I mean, I don't know how you can say that more emphatically.
A day would have been too late.
A day would have been too late. Absolutely. A minute would have been too late. The fact that an innocent man was convicted is way too late. The fact that an innocent man is accused and gone through, I assume it was quite a cumbersome trial process, etc.
And even if it came out that he was innocent, his name has now been tarnished.
Yes.
It's been dragged through the mud.
Yes. So you have to be extremely careful. So the point is, you can't just systematize this. Well, we'll put these guys through these steps, and if they make it all the way through the system, they're guilty. Right? That's the point. And you have to look at this very closely because, first of all, they're fallible human beings. So any way, step along the process, there could be mistakes made. Right? So there has to be continual reviews, theoretically, by people who are unbiased, and you have to keep on top of that as best you can. And again, that's not perfect. But again, here's a case of a guy who was in jail for 30 years who... And again, I'll post this stuff so you can read it all for yourself, because obviously we're not covering it all here on the show. But apparently insisted the whole time he did not do it. He's not guilty of the crime. I mean, what tenacity to be in jail for 30 years. I don't know how you do that. I mean, how do you know that you're being screwed over by the system every single second of those 30 years? You're saying, hey, I don't know what to tell you. I simply didn't do it. Right? At some point, don't you just give up and go, whatever? I mean, I don't know what to say to you people, right? But apparently he didn't do that. He just, no, I am innocent. I don't know what else to tell you, right? He stayed on that, and eventually, and I think the deal is, if I heard the story right, and again, read the stories that I post on the Facebook to get the true facts, or as they're at least documented or written through the media. I believe they're contemplating giving the guy $1 million to compensate him.
$1 million?
$1 million.
That's it.
Yes. And you can make two arguments. One is, well, it doesn't really matter because there's nothing we can do to compensate him. I believe he said his kids were little kids when he got convicted and thrown in jail. And obviously they're 30 plus years older. Yeah, he lost. Yeah, give him $100 million. Give him $1 trillion.
You can't give him 30 years back.
Yeah, it's over. You wrecked his life. And by the way, he was on death row. He was given a death sentence. So just think of the mental anguish. Besides, again, I guess you can say even if he knew he was going to get out, but even though that he was later exonerated, and people go, well, he was never put to death, so what's the big deal? Think about your head.
Thinking you're going to die for 30 years. Not thinking, you know you're going to die for 30 years.
For something you know you didn't do. Right? So what I'm saying is the $1 million deal, you can make a case either way. Well, $1 million, some people will say, well, that's not enough. And they have, what is? I don't know what you could do for the guy. And again, it's the thing that we've talked about on the show. I'll give this my bad analogy, which is, I say to somebody, hey, don't carry the red wine over my white carpet. And of course, eventually the person does and spills it and says, oops, I spilled it. What do I do now? And the answer is, I don't know what you do now. That's why I insisted that you don't carry the red wine over the white carpet, because I don't know how to get us out of this mess. And that's a lot what's presented from people to me on the show. Well, what are we supposed to do now? And the answer is, I don't know what the solution to statism actually is. The way to handle it is never engage in it, and then you won't have to deal with this problem. Right? It's the same way. I don't wrongly convict people because I don't know what you're supposed to do for people. I don't know what you could do for people.
But also think of the incentives in the law, in the Justice Department. It's the conviction rate. All of that matters. It's just making sure you get a conviction.
Yes,
and he even admits in there.
Yeah.
How wrong that is.
Yes.
And that's all that it mattered to him, because then he can make more money because he's got a 99% conviction rate or whatever it is.
He gets promoted. He goes to a bigger county. He goes to the state government. He goes to the federal, right? Whatever, however your career progresses because of your success rate.
Success.
Right.
I don't know if that's the right word.
In that world, it is. right?
You know, it should be kind of based on, was it actually right or wrong? Did you actually do a good job?
Yeah, and it's tougher to evaluate such items, and that's why that's not used as an part of the evaluation.
It's a little subjective as well.
It's very subjective. And in the end, life is subjective. Anyway, I think, and people say, wait a minute, Tom, you're saying you're advocating for a free society, and what are you saying? Well, it can't possibly happen? No one could ever be wrongly convicted in this free society that you advocate? I'm not saying that. I'll try to be succinct but clear. I believe the probability of this happening is vastly reduced in a free society, and I'll just leave it there because I know we have other topics. But I think that's an important thing to mention, because otherwise people will listen to the show and say, well, all you guys are doing is bashing the current system and saying it's screwed up. And they're correct. I am saying that. But I'm also saying, if you are willing to gain, as Brad iterated earlier, the context of what a free society is and how it might work, I think the things that you see today that are incentives, essentially, to gain convictions, to further careers, to do whatever.
They're systematically doing it.
Yes.
Whereas in a free society, it would be random.
Yeah, those errors would be random, not systematic. Right?
I'd rather chance myself at possibly getting mugged than for sure getting mugged.
Yes, that's the errors that you can control are the systematic ones. I say, why not control them? Why not eliminate them? Right? But society is not ready, obviously, for this change to move to a free society yet. And in a sense, good thing. That's why we have a radio show. If it was there, I think
we'd be out of business.
We'd be out of business. And we're all about this giant money-making venture in which we're engaged. Okay. Enough of that. See, that was facetious, by the way, for those people who didn't follow that.
In case you didn't know, we're not making buku bucks right now.
Yeah, just...
We're not making that Rush Limbaugh money.
No. Rush is making the Rush Limbaugh. Okay, Brad, is there anything else that's topical that I did not mention that I should have mentioned? Is there something you had on your mind that you wanted to talk about?
No, you've covered it.
I did? Okay. Sweet. This topic tonight, self-ownership, was really kind of pushed by my brother. He said, you need to do a show on this. I think a lot of people don't understand what this is. I think you should try to lay out your case as best you can. That's what I'm going to try to do here tonight. Before we really get into self-ownership, I think we have to talk about what is the idea of ownership, right? What does it mean, actually, to own something? And again, I'm going to make a case here in a second that self-ownership is actually a slightly unique case. But in general, I would argue ownership, you can define this a number of ways. You can use a number of different words. But I think the essence of it is ownership is the capacity to exercise sole dominion over something, some material, right? Sole dominion. And I think that's very important. The sole part and the dominion part are very important, right? So what does that mean? Okay, so what, Tom? I can exercise sole dominion over something. It means you can dispose of it as you see fit, which what I mean is you can consume it. You could destroy it. You can trade it. You could abandon it. You could gift it. I can't think of all the possibilities there, right? But I hope you kind of get my drift, right? You can use it essentially in any way you see fit, except for, of course, always the caveat of you cannot use it without sanction to violate someone else's right to do the same with their stuff. Okay? In other words, you can do it, you're just subject to sanction, right? But that's the idea of ownership. You can exercise sole dominion, which means it's yours. You can consume it, you can destroy it, you can trade it, you can abandon it, you can do whatever you want with it largely. Okay? So then the next question is, so how does one come to legitimately own it? How do you own something? And then, actually another question is, how do you unown something? If you can own it, you got to, just like earlier in the show we were talking about the Indiana case, well, if there's the freedom to associate, there's the freedom to disassociate, of course. It's the same thing here. Well, there's really two generally accepted methods that are found in the world of freedom, the libertarian philosophy. Okay? And the first one would be homesteading. And of course, the converse would be abandoning. But think about the idea of homesteading. I think it's very important. What really is homesteading? I know a lot of people thinking, okay, Little House on the Prairie, they had a homestead, right? But it's occupying in a sense, right? The Little House on the Prairie, we'll go with that for a second. Now, this is not a perfectly good example here, but say you come across, in the westward expansion back in the day in the States, you come across some formerly unowned land, some unowned territory. You decide that you're going to build a home there. You're going to fence it in. You're going to use it as a ranch, right? You're going to mix your labor to some degree with that land by fencing it in, by, trimming it, by creating an irrigation way through there, a driveway, you're going to build the home, etc., right? You're mixing your labor with it. You're occupying that land. You're homesteading it. Okay? And just as a little aside, you're saying, wait a minute, so the first guy to come across unknown land, he has the option to homestead it, right, if he wants to?
Yes.
Yes. Think about this. If it's not the first person, what are you saying? It's the second one? It's the third one? It's the fourth one? It's the fifth one? And I would argue, how could you have a second if you can't have a first? Right? So just think of that dilemma on the homesteading. It's the first occupier, the first person to mix his labor with whatever it is. And I just happen to use the example of land, but it could be unowned minerals in the ground. I don't know what all the things it could be. And you say, well, that's great, because that ain't going to happen anymore, because all the land in the United States or the world is owned.
Space diamonds.
Who knows, right? If the moon was made of barbecue spare ribs, would you eat it, Professor? That's another.
They call me Whiskers.
That's an inside joke. Okay, right, but the moon, Mars, the mission to Mars, right? It's maybe a one-way mission now they're talking about, blah, blah, blah.
It's not maybe.
Yeah. Okay, but there are possibilities that are coming on the horizon that, yes, they may never come to fruition, and you go, why were you talking about that? It never happened. On the other hand, it might happen a lot sooner than we think. What's going to happen with the mineral rights? I assume that's one of the underpinnings of this exploration. Mineral rights.
There's already a treaty for the moon. Anything you make on the moon is yours.
Is it really?
Or your country's, yeah.
Such a thing exists?
So if you put a rover on the moon and it poops out Legos from the moon rocks,
right?
You get those Legos.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so the homesteading and the reverse being abandoning. And again, I don't want to go into what is exactly required to homestead, what is exactly required to constitute abandonment. We'll leave that for another show. I don't want to go that deep right here, but I hope you get the general drift there, right? So homesteading / abandoning is one, and the second thing is legitimate title transfers. That's another way how you acquire property, right? And so you think about legitimate title transfers. Voluntary exchange is one of them. Inheritance, gifting, gambling. I can't. Right? Stuff like that. I think, right?
Stuff where you make or lose money or wealth.
Well, the exchange itself, by definition, if it's voluntary, wealth is created. Again, that's a little outside what we're going to talk about here, but certainly that's the case. Okay, so homesteading, legitimate title transfer. That's the two ways that you come to own property. Again, this is my little beforehand before we actually get to self-ownership. So now people are going to say to me, wait a minute, you're saying that basically you're just a hunk of property like a bookshelf, and you're self-owner, so you own yourself just like you would own a bookshelf. Not exactly. That is not what I'm saying.
Well, Tom, how do you homestead yourself?
How do you homestead? Here's the thing. In the idea of homesteading, you are, in fact, the first occupier of you.
And the only occupier of you.
Right?
Unless you have a demon in you.
Unless you have a demon in you, right? But think about, okay, so in that sense, it's quite similar to the Little House on the Prairie example, right? But here's my little caveat in there. Remember I said homesteading / abandonment? Here's the trouble. With self-ownership, there's no abandonment. In a sense, there's no out. And you say, yeah, there is. I'll just kill myself. Well,
You didn't really abandon it. You destroyed it.
yeah,
There's nothing left to take.
and you ended you, right? It's not that you just ended your body.
You ended all ownership ability.
Yes, right? It's in essence, it's the end of the world. But that's another.
As we know it.
Yes. Okay? So that's the caveat. There's no abandonment. Okay? And if there's no abandonment, let's think about this. I'm jumping way ahead to where it was, but you get to the notion of, wait a minute, if I'm a self-owner, why can't I sell myself into slavery? If I got complete control over me, why can't I just sell me? Right? And you'd say, well, who would want to do that anyway? Okay, first of all, I don't know all the potential reasons. But let's just say, one, I have a deathly sick child, and I have currently no means, or as small as my mind is, I have no potential to ever accumulate enough wealth to pay for the health services that my child needs. You say, I got my way out. I'll sell me, raise enough money to save my child.
Isn't that what called working is?
Well, no, it's a little different, okay? Selling yourself, essentially, into what?
Euphemism for prostitution, usually.
No. Is commonly, right, is slavery. Okay? I'm saying that's essentially would be abandonment. It would saying, I'm going to let my body go and let someone else own my body. But that's the whole point. I can't separate essentially my mind, my ability to reason from my body. In other words, if I'm a slave and you order me to raise my left arm, it doesn't raise because you say raise the left arm. It only raises because I go, okay, I guess I'll raise my left arm, whatever I say, right? Internally, and I may do it reactively instead of really thinking about it. But that's the point. Ultimately, I still control my left arm, even if I sold myself into slavery to you. That's why I'm saying it's actually not possible. What I can do is the point you made is the only way I can do it is I can actually sell my labor to you. But I can't sell the ownership of me to you. Right? And again, I'm jumping way ahead. I was talking about, I brought up the idea of slavery, and yeah, slavery's, we talked about it earlier too, but it's been abolished officially in the United States, right? But I would argue, for what reason was that done? Or what was the actual objection to slavery? And I know a lot of people say, well, it's just wrong. Well, I'm actually would be arguing, based on the notion of self-ownership and property rights that flow from that, is because it's a violation of property rights. That's the problem with slavery.
You are your property.
And it's innate. It can't.
You can't sell that property either.
Yeah, it's impossible. So, obviously, beyond that, it was also immoral to do that, to sell a human being. It's obviously clearly immoral to do that because you're violating their property, but it's just immoral besides that. Okay? But as a legal sense, the problem is it's a violation of property rights. For the moment, let's leave the moral issue aside. Legally, you can't do it because people are self-owners, and you're violating their property right if you think you're selling them to somebody else and you're taking their labor. That's a violation of their property right. They have to be compensated, and you say, well, who's to say how much they should be compensated, how anyone should, based on a voluntary agreement, right? That you say, I'll work for you for $10 an hour. You say yes, it's a done deal. It's $10 an hour, what I do for you. It's only valid because we both agreed to it, right? Now, whether a third party, Brad might look at this and goes, $10 an hour, you're taking advantage of him, right? You're taking advantage of Pope Tom again, like everybody does, right? But it's not possible if it was a voluntary agreement. You say, well, wait a minute, Brad might go...
You can't take advantage of something that you both agreed to.
Exactly.
You said the $10 is worth the labor. That's why you did it.
Yes. And it, by the way, and it was, as I saw it, my best alternative is why I took it. In other words, if I had basically the same job right next door, and again, you can't have exactly the same terms, 'cause you can't, but as close as possible, that guy offered me 11,
Wendy's versus McDonald's.
Right. And I wouldn't say no to the $11 given everything else equal, and he's just going to pay me more. I would have taken the more. Everybody, right? And you say, well, wait, not everybody takes the more. No, I'm arguing they do take the more. The more might not be dollars. It might be career potential.
Or benefits.
It may be benefits. It may be that I perceive that boss at that place that pays me less is a better boss. I'll just have a better working environment. My coworkers are better. I can't tell you what, but that's the whole point. People take what they see as their best alternative. Now, in fact, it could turn out later that it wasn't the best alternative, but at the time of the decision, you take your best alternative. So for Brad to step in and say, hey, you're taking advantage of him, if Tom went to Bangladesh, he'd get $15 an hour for the same work, and so therefore you're taking advantage of him. But here's the point. Maybe I don't want to move to Bangladesh. Maybe I'd be willing to move to Bangladesh, but I'd only do it if I could take my whole family because I don't want to go without my family.
I don't think the maybes even really matter in this case. You agreed to it willingly. As long as you were not forced into that contract, then you're not being taken advantage of.
That is the essence of it, but I'm just trying to explain things to Brad who says Pope Tom's being taken advantage of in my crazy example, right? Okay, so let me go back here a little bit. We talked about homesteading, legitimate title transfer. Homesteading is how one comes to own something that was previously unowned, right? That's the idea. You mix your labor with something that was previously unowned. Okay? And again, self-ownership is a unique situation of homesteading because, in fact, you can't abandon yourself. But think about this. If you own yourself, and people have made this argument, wait a minute, if I'm a self-owner, I can sell myself. And I'm arguing you can't because your self-ownership, your mind and your body essentially are inseparable, and that's why you can't do that, right? And think about it, even in a physical sense, if you, say, cut off your arm and you give it to someone else, they can't actually control the arm, right? And that's just my example of trying to show you that.
Or you think that right now. Give me a year.
Technology could possibly change that. I realize that.
I thought the same thing.
So what I have described to you really is I got to come at this from a number of different angles. Okay, so I laid out my case for self-ownership, essentially. But what I really laid out is the natural rights theory case, right? And I legitimately, many people will question this, say, well, that's not a proof. I would argue you're probably right. It's not a proof. And I would argue there isn't an ironclad proof that I am aware of. Okay? What I'm actually presenting to you is what I believe is the best alternative. In other words, I've never heard an argument that's better than that. But that doesn't mean it's absolute proof either. Okay? So I'm conceding that. But people say, well, wait a minute. If you say it's natural rights, it's inherent in man. It's man's nature, however you want to describe it. They have a problem with that because it's up to essentially my description. Well, I'm arguing it's actually not up to my description. It's not up to anyone's description. It's inherent in nature. And to give you the analogous argument is, if I say to you, hey, do you know that copper has a unique color? It has unique chemical and physical characteristics, properties, etc., right? And by saying unique, that means it's different from gold, it's different from silver, it's different from wood, it's different from plastic, it's different from anything. You would probably say to me, well, duh, that's obvious, I get that, right? Well, first of all, you didn't object to me saying it has this cool color, it has this cool texture, it has this whatever, these other... All of a sudden, you weren't objecting to that. Typically, people don't, right? But how come I get objections when I to describe man's nature? Then they say, well, that's just your description, right? It's inconsistent, in my view, as an argument against. And again, I'm not saying what I have, therefore, is absolute proof. I'm just saying I'm bringing what I believe is the best case known.
It's because those things are tangible, and this is more of an intangible.
It is less tangible, no doubt. But here's another thing. You say, well, then why are you spending your time on the show trying to convince people to think basically along the same lines as you because you think you need more people to think like you, and therefore you'll get what you want. You'll get a free society. Well, I'm arguing, actually, as Hoppe said, it's really conflict avoidance. I think we all benefit from that, me included, right? That's partly why I do the show. Think about this. Man has a unique nature. If you create what they call positive law, you just basically pull it out of your hat. You write it down and say, hey, this is going to be the law of the land. You must vote. If it's in conflict with man's nature, you are actually creating conflict. You're creating problems. I think that's counterproductive, right? We'd all be wealthier, for one, if we weren't engaged in conflict and problems, because that would allow us to spend time peacefully to cooperate and create more wealth. So, yes, I benefit from that. And I happen to have 2 sons. I have friends that I would like to be able to live in a better society than what I had.
But to back up a little bit,
all right,
it's not to have a free society for everyone. I only want people who want to have a free society to be in a free society with me. If you want to be part of a democracy, or you want to enslave yourself, as I see it, then I want you to be able to do that. I just don't want to be forced into a system that I don't want to be in.
I'm with you. And I apologize. Tim's in the chat room, and I've been missing his comments. But he has some really good ones. And so I'm backing way up now. And we won't spend any time. But he says, why does anyone have a right to a cake? Right? That's the Indiana thing. That's a good question, right? If you really think about it, why does anybody have a right to a cake? And let me just touch on that for a second, because this is a Walter Williams, and I got to say it because he's so good at this. You don't have a right to something if it obligates another to provide something for you as a result of my right. In other words, if I have a right to an automobile, that means somebody has to make it for me, right? They have to get forced to make it for me because I have a right to a car, just like the right to the cake. So, of course, the answer is no one has a right to a cake, right? People say, I have a right to health care. Actually, I get it. Under this system, you do have now a right to health care. But there is no such right. That's one of those things that are in conflict with man's nature. That's just
Positive law.
Yeah, pulled out of somebody's arse. Okay? But Tim asked, here's one, can I sell my vote? Right? If you have a right to self-ownership, can you sell your vote?
Most definitely.
You can? Who can? Would you do that?
They could pay you to vote for whoever.
Absolutely. I guess if you wanted to, you could do that. Now, again, it's in a sense, it's an odd question because I would object
Isn't
to
that what a lobbyist is?
the notion. Well, I guess so. The notion of voting, I would argue, is contrary to free society, but leave that aside for the second. But yeah, I guess you would be able.
I mean, even in this society, that's what you do.
And if they made it illegal to sell it,
That's what the House of Representatives is. They make deals all the time.
yes, but not openly,
Yeah. Oh. Sorry. No, you cannot sell votes.
right? If they made it illegal, you could just be influenced by someone.
But also in
to
a free
vote.
society, you could sell your vote.
Yeah, but there are certain things you.
People are voting on a cupcake contest. Here's
Yeah.
$5. All right. I'll
Exactly.
vote for Pope Tom's cupcakes.
I would go a little more extreme than Tim, and Walter Block is the guy to talk to. Blackmail, should it be legal?
You're going to have to rephrase the question.
I will do that. I've done this to Brad before. I found out that Brad likes to take baths with rubber duckies, but see, he doesn't want anyone to know.
Oh. I thought you were saying, like, as a man who is also of African American descent.
Yeah, wake up.
I was like, I don't know what that
Brad,
is.
did you hear that?
I gave him up.
Yeah. So
Yes, I believe blackmail, you should be able to do that.
Why?
I'm saying it's a little immoral, but you could do it.
why? That's what this show is about.
It's
Why
information.
matters.
You're just selling information.
Yeah, that's not
Just information that may cripple someone else's career.
Yeah, but here's the. I'll give you the real answer. You
Give me
you got the wrong answer. The right answer is you violated no one's property rights. If Brad and I enter an agreement and says Brad says here's $100, if you keep your big yapper shut about the rubber duckies in the tub, right? It's just a contractual agreement. Now here's the deal. Actually, you want it legalized. I'll tell you why you want it legalized.
So you could have an actual contract instead of it just being a verbal contract.
Yes, Brad now has recourse if he can show that I opened my big yapper. He has recourse against me.
You want it in writing for sure.
Yes. The point is, if it's illegal to blackmail somebody,
You get the $100,000 and he leaks it.
what's your recourse against me if I'm the big yapper, right? Think about, and again, that's partly why we do this show. That's what this is about. That think about what actually, when people say, well, I don't think, I think blackmail's a bad thing, so it should be illegal. But think of what you've just created. Right? And again, most people don't think that far. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Thanks for your comments or your questions, Tim. Excellent points.
Keep them coming. We have it up now.
Yeah, we have it up. Yes, we have it up here in the last 2 minutes of the show.
We just didn't expect anyone to comment.
So anyways, think about, I was talking about the unique nature of man, right? Man's nature and the objections, the way people object to, I'll say my presentation of it, right? But there's other things to this. And again, I'm not saying I'm providing you an ironclad proof. There's other attempts to do this. Is say, well, can you do this without using the nature of man or man's nature or natural law? And there's been other attempts. I don't know of an absolute ironclad proof of this. But I think there's some really compelling arguments. Hoppe uses argumentation ethics, which is basically making axiomatic statements, which is basically saying statements that can't be tested because they're true. And let me give you an example so you understand a little bit what I'm saying. Hoppe will argue, hey, this is actually really good I just said. Hoppe would argue, you can argue, right? He would make that axiomatic statement, as it were.
No, I can't.
Right, exactly. You are caught in a performative contradiction. If you say you're
the SAT word.
SAT word. You are arguing that you cannot argue. Right? So that's how you cannot contest the statement. You can argue. Right?
The nature of an axiomatic statement.
Yes. And it's untestable. There's a fair amount to that. We watched we had our Hoppe lesson, I think on Saturday or Sunday we had a 45, 55-minute lecture from Hoppe that our family. That's how weird our family is.
It wasn't Hoppe. It was
Hans Hermann Hoppe. Yes, it were, youngin. Oh man, I think I'm gonna have to watch that lesson with you again. Anyway, all right. So he was basically saying there's untestable things. Yeah, the argument he was saying, hey, the Keynesian, the mainstream economists are saying, no, you can make a proposition, but you must test it to see whether it's true or not.
There are some things that are untestable.
That's his point.
Intangibles, for one.
Well, it's basically his argument was axiomatic statements. It would be like he'd say, if I am standing here, you can't stand here at the same time. Right? The conventional economists would say, well, we'd have to test that.
In order to test it, you couldn't stand there at the same time.
Exactly. It's untestable, right? There's two kinds of things, and there's also demonstrative things, I think is the word he used, like where I could say, you're a cat, right? By definition, that would be true if, in fact, you were a cat, right? It's like, how do you test that, right? And there's other things that are, 2 plus 2 is 4. That's just not words. It's not. He's saying it's not just empty nothing. It says something about reality. By definition, 2 plus 2 is in fact 4.
We will put the link on Facebook because he does a much better job describing it than we are doing right now. But it is. I remember watching it and saying, "No, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong." And then he says it in such a way that you're just, you're right. Actually, I can't even argue with that.
Yeah, that's his whole point, right? So argumentation ethics was one. Stefan Molyneux put forth something called, I think, if I have this right, I believe it's universally preferential behavior is how he tries to prove self-ownership, right? I believe there's another attempt or two at that, too, and I can't tell you who did it off the top of my head. I cannot recall. But think about this for alternatives. Okay, say don't swallow any of this. I'm not a supporter of this self-ownership thing. Let's talk about this for a second. Well, what are our alternatives? If you're not a self-owner, what are the other possibilities? Somebody else owns you, right? That's one possibility. Do you happen to like that? Think that's a good idea?
No bueno.
Why?
I think it'd be pretty hard to do it, first of all. But I also like owning me.
Yes, it's not the fact that you like it. I believe they call that slavery if someone else owns me. Right? I think that was bad. It turns out it was a bad idea.
But you say in the sense of property, but you can't, as we've shown tonight, that you can't actually own someone.
Correct.
The whole idea of slavery, it's impossible.
But exactly, because think about it from another standpoint. How I would assert that it's impossible. If you would be supporting this as an alternative to self-ownership, somebody else owns you, right? Well, how could they own you if they don't own themselves? Right? Again, we talked about how you come to own something, and if you don't own yourself, how could you own something else? Well, so from that different angle, how
would anyone own you?
Yeah, how could that happen? Right? Okay, and you say, well, wait, I don't support slavery. I don't like that alternative. I'm not going to choose that one.
Mother Earth owns me.
Now you're getting a couple other places that are getting a little more difficult to defend, but I'll work on that here in a second. But so let's go a little simpler before we get there. Okay, I'm not owned by a single other person. I'm owned by an association of other persons. Okay, now, wait. There's a subset of 7 guys who own me. Or let's just go even further and say society owns me.
Every person on the planet has partial ownership.
I am 1/6 billionth owner of myself, and you are 1/6 billionth owner of me and of yourself, etc., etc. Right?
I think I know where you're going with this.
All right, lay it out there.
I'm going to say you need to get at least majority rule in order for me to raise my right arm then. I need to get over 3 billion people to say, we agree that Aleks should raise his right arm. And clearly we cannot do that. It's not practical in the slightest. Nothing would ever be able to get done. And, in fact, for them to agree on it, I would have to agree that they can agree on it, my 1/6 billionth of it, and they'd have to get that many people. So technically nothing would ever happen if that were the case.
Yeah, and think about this. How would you be able to request for it to come to a vote? You'd have to have, whether it be a majority or whatever.
It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing.
Yeah, you couldn't do anything because you don't have permission to do it from your owners.
And then there would be no chicken and no egg.
Right. So what I'm saying, those are two of the more, a bad description, physical possibilities to ownership, right? Either you own yourself, somebody else owns you, or a whole bunch of other folks own you. And I think we've gone through and kind of refuted the other two, I would argue, fairly easy. I'm not saying ironclad. I'm just saying, as a practical matter, we've done it. Oh.
Uh-oh.
We got some other audio here.
This is our advertisement. This is how we make all our buku bucks.
Billions of dollars. Okay. Now, Aleks brought up another one that actually I think needs to be addressed. What did you say?
Mother Earth owns me.
Okay, Mother Earth owns me. And I'll even go this far. God owns me. Right? We'll go there. Because I'm going to put them, essentially, they're not in the same category, but I'm going to stick them in there for a second. Okay? The Mother Earth owns me. Well, who's Mother Earth? How do I get Mother Earth to represent me in the court of law? Because again, I'm really talking about justice here. That's what this whole show's about. This what the whole Freedom Society thing's about. So how do I get represented in court? Does Mother Earth show up? Who makes my case for me?
I call Mother Earth to the stand.
I call Mother Earth to the stand, right? How do I just say, well, I get to do whatever I want because Mother Earth has allowed me to? How do I know Mother Earth has allowed me to do so?
It seems a bit like a cop-out.
Right? It's if you think what I'm saying as self-ownership is a little too nebulous, I think that's a bad alternative, right? And let me just say the quickly on the God thing instead of going too far, it's not a universal ethic. In other words, it doesn't apply to everyone all the time. Why? Because some people will say, I'm an atheist, or I don't know if atheist is the right word. I don't believe in God. I don't know, whatever, however they would
I'm a Buddhist.
I'm a Buddhist, yeah. My God's a different God than yours. I don't know. Is that right for Buddhists? I don't know how Buddhists.
My gods are different than your one God.
Right. Okay. So which set of gods prevails? And I know I would think most religions will say, well, my God is the one true God, so my God prevails. But you can also see that the other guy's going to say the same thing,
but what
and
about
now you're stuck.
polytheistic, like Buddhism? Which Buddha?
Well, okay, I don't know anything about anything, so I can't really comment on that. But I think people could see the same dilemma, right? That's the problem. And you say, well, what are you saying here? Well, look at nature is in fact a universal ethic. As far as I know, we're all trapped in this universe. Until somebody comes to me and says, I actually am not in this universe. I'm in a different universe, and if there can present some kind of substantiation for it, okay, well, that opens a new can of worms. But until then, I think we've got it covered as far as the universal ethic. Anyway, so we went through the alternatives to the possibility of self-ownership. We went through Hoppe, and a little, we just touched on the a priori things or the axiomatic statements, etc. So, Hoppe uses self-ownership to establish property rights to that thing, which obviously I tried to basically make that case too. And he does this without using an understanding of nature, but logic alone is the way to do it. And there's been arguments that he hasn't created an absolute proof. Others saying he just makes a compelling argument. Whatever. I would just lay this out as the best alternative that's available at the moment, notwithstanding that a full proof won't come. It just might, and it might be sooner rather than later. But again, obviously, I'm not very good at predicting the future. Otherwise, I'd be really rich because I'd be in the stock market. So let me just wind down from there because we're getting way long. My concluding statement is self-ownership is inherent in nature. That's the argument I laid out today, basically. To deny it is to deny nature. And even if you do deny nature, you're still subject to the natural laws, which this is one of them in my view, right? Your self-ownership. So you can deny it. It doesn't mean it doesn't work on you. It doesn't exist.
I deny gravity.
There you go. I still see you sitting here on this planet Earth, though you didn't fly away. And think about this. Without self-ownership, there actually is no private property rights. That means you can't own anything. And people say, well, yeah, we don't really own anything anyway. Well, if you hold to that statement, by the way, I'll be over to your house and grabbing what you might say is your TV. Because if you don't really own your TV, I guess I could own your TV. Right? So you don't have any objection to anybody taking your stuff whenever they want. I don't know, you're sitting at a restaurant and somebody comes up with a fork and they take your steak and just walk away. You go, cool. Excellent.
What if I make the statement that the Earth owns it and I'm just renting it? As in, the Earth owns this body and I'm just renting it for the time being.
You can make that statement so you won't have a problem when the guy steals your steak. You don't have a problem when I come into your house and I grab the keys to your car and I drive off with it.
I was renting it, though.
Well, on what basis are you renting it? Because I think I'm renting it. Okay? It's the whole ownership thing. And I'm going to argue without property rights, there is no ownership of property by individuals. And if individuals cannot own property, how can an association of individuals own property? Right? If an individual can't own a property, how can Stalin and his government own the property? You say, well, because they just wrote a law to say they didn't. Well, think about this. I mean, they just wrote some words on the paper that says, actually, we own the stuff. And you see that as legitimate? Yeah, because 51% of the people said so, or because Stalin killed enough people, that makes it legitimate.
Until they said so.
Right? Exactly. I mean, all these things. Think about these things. They're crazy notions, these laws that get passed. Well, why? Just because the majority of people said that? Anyway, we're getting back to the voting thing. Anyway, but again, if an individual can't own something, how can an association of non-owners own something? Okay? So with that, that's all I have for tonight. I think I hope I covered the concept of self-ownership.
I think we covered a lot.
Yes, we did, and all those current events. Those current events were kind of fun. I haven't done that in a while.
We like to do the smorgasbord when I'm on here.
I do like to do the smorgasbord because I never know where this is going to go, and that's what makes it interesting. Anyway, tell your friends about the show. Heck, even tell your enemies. I don't care. I mean, I would like to have more listeners. And I think not only the fact that I would like more listeners, I think some of this information would be helpful to people to gain a better understanding of a system of justice and better understanding, a better tool to analyze what's going on in the world. That's why I think the show's important. The next episode I've got written here is an old one. I'm not sure what we're doing, but we'll be on next week, Tuesday, 7 Central. We'll be live. Of course, you can listen to the shows archived at Spreaker.com. That's probably the easier place to find us. Just in the search box, put Annoying Peasant Radio. The last show will come up first. Okay? With that, Brad, I got to hand it to you. Is there anything you want to add? Anything you want to add to close out the show?
I would add that I think for somebody that's been conversing with you over this for a long time, and maybe Aleks would agree with this, maybe you wouldn't. I think that the foundational principle of self-ownership is a very, very, very hard thing for a person to get their mind around. That to the extent that it doesn't exist in their world today.
Yeah, it's something that
Current system, and I think most people just go, "I have no idea what he's talking about because I think I own me. I do what I want to do."
Yes, I think they really don't think about it in any depth.
Agreed.
But I think it's fundamentally important to a free society, and I think it's fundamentally important, again, if you understood that, you could use it essentially as an analysis tool in part as to what's going on in the world.
Yes.
Wait a minute, if I own myself, is this law legit or is it not?
Yes.
Right?
I don't mean to digress. I just think it's something that a person needs to be very mindful of considering.
Yes. All right. Anything else on wrapping up the show for you, Brad? Anything that we should have mentioned that we didn't mention? Anything?
No, I think having Aleks along was all right.
All right, come on.
I'm just kidding, man. It's great having you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on again.
Okay, with that, I'm going to remind everyone that you've been listening to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. The topic of the day was self-ownership, and we're going to have a fresh set of topics for you and probably a fair amount of current events.
And hopefully music.
And some music. Yes, with my technical director here, I'm putting pressure on him to get this straightened out for me. So hopefully we'll be all set by next week. We got a whole lot of other things happening, by the way. And you say, well, you've been fighting this technical issue for a long time. I realize that, but we're also on the cusp of some major changes, so it's not worth the investment totally to get some of these things fixed because our whole system's going to change. But that's another topic. I hope you can join us next Tuesday. Again, if you can't listen to us live and get in the chat, you can always listen to the archive shows. I think some of these, like Brad had pointed out, these are very foundational. They're timeless in a sense. So going back to listen to those shows is not by any stretch a mistake. So with that, you've been listening to Annoying Peasant Radio Show. We appreciate you listening, and we're going to close it out, and we hope to chat with you on Tuesday. Good night, everybody, and thanks for joining us.